Hi, and thank you for taking this course. My name is Danita Smith, and we're going to walk through together how to build a website. We're going to build the structure and the basis of a website by learning HTML and walking through some basics of HTML. So maybe you're an entrepreneur and you have your own website and you want to be able to do more, because a lot of times you're allowed to kind of add your own code to a website, even if you have one of those ones that do a lot for you, that are kind of plug and play. You still can do a lot of your own by adding some more functionality and additional information to your website. So maybe you want to learn that, or maybe you're a young person and you want to think about programming and you're not sure where to start. Learning how to do web programming might be a very good introduction into programming, which is why I'm doing the course. It may be a very good place to start, and where you start with that is with HTML. It's kind of the beginning of that. So let's get started and let's jump in. Let's go right into it. Now, when you think about what we're doing when we go to any website and we type in a web address, www.computersciencethroughtheweb.com, what we're actually doing is we're typing in a URL, something called a uniform resource locator. And let's think about the last two words of that, resource locator, because that's exactly what's going on. When you go to a website, any website that you might go to, and this is Black in Education, blackineducation.com, what you see on that website is a collection of files. So you'll have image files or text files that you have right here. Maybe there are video files later on. There are various things that are part of that website. So the resources or the files for that website are located on some computer that's usually called a server. And so what happens is what your browser does, which is the window in which you're viewing the website, your browser goes and it finds the files, if you will, that are part of that website, that are part of that resource, if you will, that web address, and then it goes ahead and displays that information and shows it to you on your screen. So when you're doing that, there's a lot that kind of goes into that. There's a whole process that goes into that. That's essentially what's going on. Your browser is requesting information from the server that houses the files that make up that website, and then the server returns that information to your computer and you see it. So what happens, though, when you look at web development and web programming, there are two sides of web programming. There's what you see, and that's called client-side or front-end web development, and there's what you don't see. That's called server-side or back-end web development. These are two sides of web development. When it comes to what you see, everything you see on a screen, typically there are three languages that make that up, and that's Hypertext Markup Language, or HTML, which we're going to talk about, CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, or JavaScript. And typically when you're looking at a website, those are the three major languages that you're seeing, the three major things that you're seeing with that website is a lot of different information put on the website using those three languages, those three technologies, if you will. But then also the back end side is what you don't see. Let's say you have a website like Amazon or Facebook or whatever it might be, and you have to log into that website with a password. So obviously that password is remembered. It's your password. It's something about you that's remembered. It's housed in the database. It's verified. It's checked. So that's all done behind the scenes, and you don't see it, right? So that's a back-end part, one of the back-end parts of web development. And when you use back-end web development, there are more in different languages that you'll learn. You'll learn PHP, maybe Java, JavaScript, and you'll notice that JavaScript can be used on the front end and the back end. But there are many other different languages that you'll learn. But in addition to that, if you don't want to do one or the other, you can do both. And that's typically called full stack web development. That's when you're actually looking at and using both from the entire front end to the back end, using technologies to walk you through the whole thing. So you can do one or the other, or you can do both. So we'll talk a little bit more about this just real quick about Hypertext Markup Language and CSS. Just to be more specific. So let's say you have, a title right here. This is a title that I have on my website. You have text that's put on here. You have images. So obviously, to put the content, this structure in place, if you will, and the browser is actually reading the structure as a title, a heading, if you will, and text. That's done with HTML. So the content for your website is put on your website through HTML. The images that you add, how you store them, all that's done. The structure is laid out with HTML. CSS adds style. So when you hover over a link, and let's say it changes colors or let you know it's a link and the cursor changes a little bit, and you have different font that you can use and backgrounds and things like that, that's done with CSS. That adds the style to your website. And we're going to do that and talk about that in a later course. But let's say also that you want to add some functionality to your website. And with that, you can do that with JavaScript. JavaScript allows you to kind of dynamically access a website. You can actually change the elements and the content you put on your website with JavaScript. Not only that, if you want something like a pop-up window to show up and to pop up on your website to alert a user when something happens or takes place, or if they wanted to make a carousel or something like that, all that kind of interactivity and functionality, that's done with JavaScript. So JavaScript allows you to have actions and manage the actions on your website. And that's it. If you learn those 2 or 3 languages, you'll be a very good, effective front-end web developer, and there are many more things you can do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get started.